is Justine Johnson, and I'm the Assistant Vice President of Government and Community Relations for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. With me is James Wong, my colleague, so we'll be going through the presentation together and discussing citywide ferry service and the location for the Roosevelt Island's location. So first and foremost, many people wonder how and why is EDC involved in ferry planning and ferry operations. And this slide here really talks about our experience with ferry planning and ferry operations. Something I'd like to highlight here is that in 2011, we did the East River Ferry pilot. And this was a pilot program, not sure if anyone's familiar with it, but it connects parts of Manhattan to locations of Brooklyn and into Queens as well, and back on into Manhattan, located all throughout the waterfront. That pilot program definitely superseded our expectations in terms of ridership. We have about 1.3 million trips completed per year on the East River Ferry, and really it set the tone for how could we expand ferry service throughout the entire city. What options and opportunities did we have? So from there, we did a citywide ferry study in 2013, where we looked at about 60 locations throughout the city. Some of the things that we looked at were, one, the navigability of waterways. Can we safely bring a vessel to a particular location? We looked at things such as population density. So where is the population density today, and where is the projected population density? Is it coming online? What's happening in this area? So this is just a little bit of the framework of what goes on into ferry planning and ferry operations. Also just want to highlight, ferries have been used in many emergency situations. So in terms of resiliency and redundancy, ferries definitely do play a major part in providing services to those who are in emergency. We've seen in 9/11, ferries came to the rescue to help people evacuate parts of Lower Manhattan. And also Hurricane Sandy, we ran a service in the Rockaways, an emergency service, immediately about three days after the storm. So this is something that we've noticed that with ferry service, this is a benefit in terms of having the infrastructure there. So from the 2013 citywide ferry study, we narrowed down to about 21 locations throughout the city. And those locations were announced in the mayor's 2015 State of the City address. So our main project goals, first and foremost, is that we want a safe and reliable ferry system. We want this not only to be safe for those who are riding the ferry, but as well as something that's safe for those who are operating the ferries. We understand that there are many recreational users, so we want to ensure that the system is safe for all who will be riding or also using our shared waterways. Are we having a problem with sound? Yeah? Okay. In terms of our service routes, so we will be launching 3 routes in 2017. Those 3 routes will be comprised of the Rockaway route. So if you're looking at your maps identify where the Rockaway route will be going, Astoria route, and the South Brooklyn route. And I'll go into details in terms of how that relates to Roosevelt Island. We will be launching the remaining 2 routes in 2018, and they will be providing service to the Lower East Side and as well as Soundview, connecting those on into Soundview, specifically into Manhattan. Another important component of this is to ensure that we continue the existing East River Ferry system. As mentioned before, this definitely did set the tone in terms of expectations for ferry service. We want to continue this system because we think it is it's a benefit for the users and people really like it. So we want to incorporate that into the larger network. And lastly, we want this to be a unified system. No matter where you are throughout the network, you will be seeing a uniform brand of the citywide ferry service. Right now, we don't have an operator selected, so I don't have the brand, but once we get that done, it will be uniform throughout the system. So in terms of the Astoria route, which relates to Roosevelt Island, if you're looking at your map, looking north in Queens, so starting from Astoria, the route will go Astoria into Roosevelt Island, and then from Roosevelt Island into Long Island City, Queens, then down into East 34th Street, and then down into Wall Street, Pier 11. So that's the components for the Astoria route. You can see those on your map as well. In terms of the general service, there will be a total of 5 new routes plus the existing East River Ferry route that will be comprised of the entire citywide ferry service. Something we're really excited about is that the fare has been pegged to $2.75, which is the same as the subway or bus fare. I have to be very clear that MetroCard is actually phasing out their legacy MetroCard, so we've been in conversations with MTA. They've advised us for the launch of citywide ferry service that we not integrate with their system. However, we are in continual conversations about launching with the next generation fare payment from MTA. In terms of landings, there will be a total of 21 landings throughout the entire system. 10 of those landings will be brand new. So specifically as that relates to Roosevelt Island, there will be a brand new landing in place. Several landings, and those are the ones that are comprised of the East River Ferry. Some of those will be reconfigured so that we can accommodate various vessels. In terms of funding, the city has committed to $55 million for capital infrastructure. So that means barges, that means the gangways, that's the actual built out of the landings that will be comprised of the entire system. And the city and EDC will be working together to handle any of the additional operating expenses with providing ferry service. In terms of the ferry landing, I'm going to walk you through in terms of what you would be seeing. Where the people are standing on this particular diagram, and this is just a conceptual diagram of what we are envisioning for our design, is that there is an existing esplanade or the upland area where people will be walking onto a gangway, a covered gangway. Before we go on to the gangway, I'll mention there's a security gate. This security gate is something that is approved by the U.S. Coast Guard, so whenever the ferry is not in operations, the gate is closed. And whenever the ferry is in operations, the gate is open for people to use it. The gangway is covered and the gangway is ADA compliant, so for those who use wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, etc., they can utilize the system as well. We have a floating barge, and something that we really like about this ferry landing design is that all the amenities are on the barge. So specifically, I mean the seating, ticketing machines, and as well as a canopy, so some type of shelter while you're waiting for the ferry service. We really like this particular design because it keeps all ferry-related activities on the barge and not on the upland areas. So I'll hand it over to James, who will talk about our technical studies and our site location for the Roosevelt Island ferry landing.
Thanks, Justine. What you're looking at here is a bathymetric study which shows you the depth of water throughout different parts of the East River. And it's a little hard to tell in this map, but the very quick story here is that there's plenty of water depth, which is a good thing for Roosevelt Island, whereas we have a lot of other locations throughout the city where we've had certain challenges or at least acknowledgements that there is shallower water. So in this study, the bathymetric, we've looked to see what the depth of the water is and seeing well over the 15 feet that we're looking for as a gating amount so that we know that we can bring ferry service to the east side of Roosevelt Island. Also, I'm sorry if it's a little challenging to see here. What we're showing here on the east side of the island, just under the bridge and just east of the steam plant, of the existing steam plant, this location is at the oil barge dock on the east side. And what you're seeing here is a set of gangways that lead out onto the barge, as Justine has described, in order to accommodate 3 different vessel configurations. The reason we've done this is to ensure, as Justine was talking about, that we have a very resilient system. So while we do have plans to bring in our ferry system, we also want to make sure that in an emergency, should other types of ferries or vessels come in, they're able to use this landing in order to bring people to or from the island. So this is the location where we've looked, and we also have shown just some of these turning circles to help make sure that we have a navigable area in order to operate ferries. This is another view to give you a little bit better perspective, looking west into Manhattan. That this area right under, just north of the bridge, is where we're talking about the landing in the water here. As far as next steps, we are continuing to do our community outreach. This is an effort that has started close to a year ago as we've gone through and worked with a number of communities throughout the city, and we are already made great strides on things like our environmental review. So we're through parts of the environmental review. We've just finished up our scoping process, where we were opening our scope to public comment. There will be another round of public comment once we have our draft environmental impact statement out. So we're expecting to have that in February. So there will be another round where people can place public comments on the record on the evaluation of or disclosure of any impacts that we're having. We are looking for a private operator to actually run the system. So we released an RFP shortly after the mayor's announcement, and we're actively in procurement to bring on a private operator who will run the full system for us. So this private operator is expected to bring the vessels, to bring the crew and everything in order to run the service for us. And we expect to have someone under contract by early next year. We are, as far as permitting, everything that we put in the water has to go through Army Corps and DEC, New York State DEC permitting. So we are going to be going through that permitting process starting very shortly. As we get closer to our draft environmental impact statement, we can submit for permits. And that's one of our longer lead items and one of the things that we're making sure that we stay on target with. And then as far as landing, design, and construction, we will be doing the more formal design process starting at the beginning of next year. What we've already gotten started on, and this is one of the ways we've been able to accelerate the project in order to deliver it in a very quick way for the city, is to start building our barges. So we are already starting to fabricate barges, and in fact, I think we're close to seeing the first one completed. And these are just the steel boxes on which people will eventually be standing once we have them outfitted with the amenities and the shelters and everything that makes them great. So we're moving very quickly. We're excited to launch service by spring of 17 on the first route in the Rockaways, and coming quickly after both the South Brooklyn and the Astoria routes. So we are looking forward to bringing service here by mid-2017. We did want to flag that for more information, we do have a website. I hope you guys are able to visit it. If you look on the bottom of your map, you can actually see there's a website listed there. It has lots of information, including everything that we've shown here. It has a lot of information related to the various routes throughout the city so that you can see where else you can connect to once you get onto a ferry in New York City. And also we've just started tweeting, so you can also tweet at us with the citywide ferry hashtag. And one thing, I don't think it's on here, but there's also an email address if you look at the bottom of your map. If you have any questions or if you have any other groups that you're interested in having us present at, please send us an email. This goes straight to Justine, so we have constant eyes on this email address. It's not just an empty box. And we have responded to a number of people going to different community and civic organizations based because people are curious about it, and we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. So with that, I'll pause and turn it over for questions from the community.
Thank you. If you're a member of the public and you wish to ask some questions, I'm going to ask you now to take this time to come up and form a line. You can ask whatever questions you have of the EDC, so while you're doing so, please make sure you come up. Remember that for all board members, what we'll do is we're going to have the public first, and then the board members will have an opportunity to also ask their own questions. But the first, if you want to come up, sure.